So, hello and welcome to the presentation of AstroCamp 2020. I'm Carlos Martins, I'm the Scientific Director of the camp, and together with Sofia, who's sitting next to me, and with Carolina, who's joining us from Italy, we'll explain a little bit what the camp is. In particular, the two of them will talk about last year's edition, and then we'll explain how you can apply to this year's edition. So, first of all, what is the camp? Well, it's an academic program which we have been organizing since 2012 in the field of astronomy and physics, aimed at high school students in the last 3 years of school before university. Initially, the camp was only for Portuguese students, but now it's an international program and students from many countries can apply, as you'll see in a moment. So this year's edition will be the 9th edition. It will take place from the 9th to the 23rd of August in the Cornwall Protected Landscape Area in Paredes de Cóa in the north of Portugal. So our goal is to identify bright, motivated students who want to learn about physics and astronomy and which have the potential to be future leaders in this area, and get them together for 2 weeks in an isolated area where they can focus on work, where by design they don't have internet access, so they can just discuss things with each other, with teachers and so on, and learn as much physics and astronomy and programming and data analysis as we can. In addition to this, we want to stimulate competencies like critical thinking, curiosity, teamwork, group responsibility, and so on. And of course, we want to get all these people together, get them interacting with each other. So we have people coming from different countries, different backgrounds, and that's obviously a very rewarding experience for everyone. Okay, so how do you get into the camp? Well, the camp is selective, which means that if you want to participate, you have to go through an application process, and the second step in this application process will be an interview that we always conduct in English, even for students in Portugal. And our principle is that for students studying in Portuguese schools, the camp is free. It has no cost for participants. For students coming from other countries, we may have some funding for you. In particular, we have a bursary from ESO that I'll talk about in more detail later on. You may, if you get offered a place, you may try to find funding from local sources, maybe your school, maybe your municipality, maybe other sources. And in last resort, if there's no other possibility, you may have to cover, or your parents may have to cover part of your expenses in the camp. So I'll explain that a little bit in more detail later on when we talk about this year's edition. What kind of activities do you have in the camp? Well, there's a scientific part and there's a recreational part. On the scientific side, each student must take 2 courses, each of which has a set of lectures, 10 lectures, and it will have an exam at the end. We'll have additional projects like a computational project where you learn how to program. We have observational project where we look at the sky, and exactly what project we have depends a little bit from year to year. It depends on what you can see on the sky in each year. We also have more informal stargazing sessions. We do other geeky things like watch science documentaries and various sorts of things like that. And then we have various recreational activities, and this includes hiking. So we'll be in a mountain area where the landscape is very beautiful, so it's very nice to hike. In one of these hikes, we pass through a small river beach, so you can swim on the river. We also have community service activities, and I'll mention one that we did in the past in a minute. The camp also has a small public part, so there's a set of public talks which are organized with the students in mind, but which are open to the rest of the public. And we also have a number of follow-up activities after the camp. So students that participate in the camp can, if they choose to, engage in these activities later on. So let me mention one of these community service activities that we did in in previous years and which we're quite proud of. So we created what we call a solar system trail. So that's first a scale model of the solar system that is accurate both in terms of sizes and in terms of distances of the objects. Those are quite rare. As far as I know, there's 16 or 17 of them throughout Europe that are accurate and that are active. So we built one of them, and it was the second in the Iberian Peninsula. But on top of that, we also added a hiking trail. So with the help of the Paredes de Cora municipality, a trail was created which goes through the various planets in the solar system. So as you hike in the mountains, you can come across the planets in their right relative distances and so on. So that's an official hiking trail that people can hike through, and there's a lot of information along the trails so people can learn a bit about astronomy as they hike. Okay, so before letting Sophia and Carolina speak, let me summarize a little bit what have been the 8 previous editions of the camp. So far, we had 102 students participating. So as I said, initially there were only Portuguese students in the first 4 editions, and we had about 10 students each year. Then the camp became international, and we started accepting a slightly larger number of students. So you can see some small statistical analysis showing you that nowadays around half the students that are selected to the camp are foreign students. So these are the students that participate, not the students that apply, although the numbers are not that different if you look at them that way. In terms of the last 3 years of high school, and so in Portugal, these are called 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. In other countries, the names will be a little bit different. Distribution among 3 years is not that different, although there is a slight majority, or almost a 50% majority from students in the 11th grade, so in the middle year, in this three-year period. So that's where most of the students participating in the camp come from. But this is not by design, it's not chosen by us. It just reflects the number of students that apply. Finally, it has been a trend more or less throughout the 8 years of the camp that slightly more girls than boys participate in the camp, and this is also true roughly among the numbers of applications. Okay, so with that said, Carolina and Sophia will now tell you a little bit about their experience last year. So you can have the remote.
Hi, my name is Fia Brown. I'm Portuguese and I participated in last year's edition. I got to know about AstroCamp through my school teachers and decided to apply. I've been interested in astrophysics for a few years, so I thought AstroCamp would be a great way to learn how the life of a researcher is and to develop some other skills such as skills for scientific inquiry, communication, and social skills, which I'll mention later. Besides that, the activities promoted are very cool, especially stargazing.
Hello, I'm Carolina Cinigo. I'm from Italy and I participated in last year's edition of AstroCamp. The way that I discovered AstroCamp was through a family friend who read about the camp online and thought I would be interested. In fact, the reason why I applied is that I have always been interested in scientific experiments, especially in physics and also stargazing. Along with that, I have always loved traveling with my family and going to new places. And so for these 2 reasons, the camp seemed like the obvious place for me to apply.
During AstroCamp, you'll learn about many things throughout different activities. As you already know, you'll have two courses in which you'll do an exam at the end. The classes will be in the morning, and you'll also be evaluated in a few more assignments. It can be a bit demanding, but there is no pressure. If you have any doubts or worries, you can always talk to a teacher, monitor, or even another student. You may have the opportunity to learn about a topic that interests you, since you'll be allowed to choose 2 courses from a list once you're admitted. There's also a teamwork activity, which is the Computational Project. This can also be hard, even more if you haven't coded before, like me. I didn't know how to code, but it was a great experience, also because we had the chance to work with real data from the Hubble telescope. The groups are set so that people with less experience are with more experienced students, and plus the monitors will be there to help you, and you won't be graded. The computational project is a great opportunity to develop skills you'll most likely need in the future if you pursue a career in sciences and technologies. Apart from that, you'll acquire more knowledge of astrophysics and other matters through more relaxed activities such as documentaries, movies, public talks, and stargazing sessions. Besides, you'll be able to ask wherever you want, not only in the public talks, but also to the physicists and astronomers you'll meet during the Skype sessions. So feel free to prepare questions if you like. And of course, you'll have plenty of time to chat with the other students, teachers, and monitors who can tell you about their own academic journey, for instance. Now onto community. The camp is very well organized. You'll have a timetable to follow. Sleeping accommodation is very comfortable. Boys and girls have their own separate dorms, which are divided in compartments for up to 4 people. Bathrooms are shared by the occupants of each dorm. You'll be reminded to bring some things once you're admitted, so there's nothing to worry about. And food restrictions, physical, functional, or health limitations are all taken into consideration. In my opinion, the environment is nice and you'll be surrounded by nature and friendly people.
Okay, so onto the social part of the camp. As you know, you will meet people from different cultures and countries, like me, for example. This means you will not only be learning physics, but also learning about different cultures and maybe different ways of learning science in different countries. So some of the group activities that we did were watching documentaries in the evening, but we also played traditional games on the site, such as tug of war and beanbags. The monitors were all Portuguese students from previous editions of the AstroCamp. It was very interesting to learn how important the camp was in their experience. So, for example, they also did some public lectures about what they are studying right now in university. So it was interesting to know how the AstroCamp influenced their choice of university course. Finally, the last dinner is international. We spent one afternoon cooking different dishes from the countries where we were from, as you can see in the picture. And finally, mobile phones are not allowed, but this is not a problem with all the activities that are planned. There is a timetable that you can follow, and it's very, very full of things. So, talking about the activities, there are other activities aside from the lectures and the public talks and documentaries. For example, we went on many different hikes. As Carlos mentioned, there is the solar system trail. It is in the same valley as the campsite, and there was the occasion to do community service because the trail needs to be cleared every year. Furthermore, I think the panorama is amazing on the trail, and you can get some pictures if you like to get as memories, and that's a very nice part of the AstroCamp. We went on another hike in a nearby valley to a river, as you can see in the pictures, and that was also very fun, I think. Finally, we went on a day trip to Paredes de Cora to visit the local library and the museum, so we learned about the culture of the place. One other activity that we did was stargazing. We had the chance to use telescopes from the local organization to see planets and some star systems, which is something that I had done a couple of times before, but this was very interesting. And finally, I think the most special thing was a night hike that we did to a nearby mountain. We stargazed for a longer period of time at night. It was special because you could see how important the light pollution is. When you are trying to stargaze, you often don't realize it, but there's a lot of light pollution, which makes it very hard to stargaze. During this hike, we learned practical skills, such as wearing warm clothes and being prepared for any type of weather. But we also learned skills that were more intellectual, so learning about the environment and about cosmology as well, and astronomy.
As for my personal experience, participating in AstroCamp was a challenge and an amazing adventure at the same time. I would advise you to make the most of your classes more by listening than trying to write everything down, because you'll be given plenty of material to study and revision. Also, don't stress about the exams at all. Keep in mind that you're there to learn. And you get to make awesome friends, and you'll see that AstroCamp is about more than just those 2 weeks, because you'll gain relationships, confidence, and knowledge that you'll take for the future. And I think AstroCamp was also a good way to learn about myself.
So, in my experience, AstroCamp was amazing. I spent 2 weeks with people that I shared interests with, and I met so many new people, which is always amazing. I learned a lot as well. There were many things that I did not know how to do, such as a computational project. By the way, me and Sophia were in the same group, so we had lots of fun learning how to analyze data. I also learned that I'm interested in cosmology and astrophysics a lot. So this camp was useful for me to understand about my future and what I want to do. It was very challenging to spend so much time with people I didn't know, but the camp was incredible because it allowed me to create strong bonds with the people in the morning, getting ready during meal times, and also going to bed. So there was always a chance to get to know each other better. Finally, I learned a lot about Portuguese culture because I had never been to Portugal, and I would love to go back.
Okay, thank you, Sophia and Carolina. So now I will explain you in a little bit more detail how you can apply to AstroCamp and what's new in this edition with respect to previous editions. The differences are small, but there are a few important ones. So first of all, who's eligible to apply? So you have to be a student currently studying in one of the last 3 years before university in any of the 42 countries that you see on the list. So this means you must be simultaneously studying, living in one of these countries, and be a national of one of these countries. You don't have to be a national of the country where you're studying, of course. You can be a Brazilian student studying in Portugal, for example, but you must fulfill both the nationality and the residence criterion. So this year there are 42 countries, and this is one of the novelties. So there are 2 countries that we added to the list with respect to last year, and these are Canada and US. So camp is now a little bit more international. Last year, for the first time, the number of applications from Portugal was less than 50% for the first time. This year, probably the number will be comparable or even lower. So again, I think having a very international camp is a very useful experience for everyone. So what we have planned, so I already told you the camp dates. It's August 9th to 23rd. We're expecting to have between 15 and 20 students from these 42 eligible countries. We'll have between 2 and 4 teachers, and all teachers are active researchers, people that are working in physics or astronomy or related areas. And we'll have some monitors, between 5 and 6, depending on the number of students. And almost always, the monitors are, as Carolina mentioned already, previous students from the camp. This is useful because the monitors have been there, they know how the camp works, and they also know what kinds of difficulties the students tend to have, and therefore they're better placed to help the student than someone who had no previous experience with the camp. Regarding funding, as I said, for students studying in Portuguese schools, whether or not they are Portuguese nationals, the camp is free on a point of principle. For other students, other funding opportunities. So we have a bursary provided by ISO, which is always given to one student from one ISO member country. So Carolina got the bursary last year. We also have additional agreements with other international partners. For example, we have an agreement with Fundación Catalunya La Pedrera. And essentially, the principle of this agreement is that there is no quotas for these students, but if students apply and are offered places, then foundations like this one can cover the student expenses. So they're one opportunity to get funding more or less directly for students that are eligible. And we have a few of these informal agreements with people in different countries. So if you are offered a place, you will receive from us information on who you should contact to try and get your expenses covered. In terms of the organization, Sophia already mentioned that students are involved in the selection of the courses. So what we do is we have an international call for courses. So people can propose to teach courses at the camp. We do a small selection. We check that the course is appropriate for high school students of this age, that is scientifically and pedagogically reasonable. And then we have a list of courses. And when we are making the selection of the students will get a list of possible courses and will be asked to tell us which courses they would prefer to have. So on the slide, you can see a partial list of courses that have been offered in the past. Some were taught in the camp, some were not because they were not selected by the students. But this is to show you that there is in principle a reasonable list of different topics, some more abstract, some more practical, some more broad, some more focused on specific things. And in principle, you can express your preferences. We try and more or less reach a consensus. So if more or less all the students want the same 2 courses, those 2 courses will be offered at the camp. If there's a significant division, we'll have more than 2 courses and we'll have different subgroups taking each pair of courses. The restriction here is one of funding. So if we have more teachers in the camp, we have to cover their food and accommodation, and we'll have a little bit less money for students. So that's why we try to balance 2 things as much as possible. Now, one important thing, and this is a slight novelty with respect to previous years, is that we found out through the experience of various years that it's good for the students to prepare a little bit better for the camp, to read a few things in advance and things like that. So one thing that we'll do this year is that you should, so if you are offered a place, and the places are offered in the beginning of June, as I'll mention in a moment, you should be able to, or should be prepared to spend a little bit of time, let's say in July, once you finish your school classes, to prepare for the camp by reading a few things, by maybe looking a little bit into what coding is and so on. So we'll send you some information, some list of things for you to read and so on. This should not take you a huge amount of time, but I think it is useful for you to get ready for the camp so that when we arrive there, you're ready to learn as much and as fast as possible. One other activity that we also have every year, it's an alumni weekend. So in the weekend, in the middle of the camp, students from previous editions of the camp can come back to the camp and meet the newest generation of AstroCamp students, and it's always nice to share experiences and to see how different the camp is now from what it was in 2012 when it started and so on. So this, again, it's another opportunity for you to meet people. These people are now studying in university. Some of them are already doing PhDs or about to finish their PhDs. So you can see people in different stages of their academic careers, and it's always good to learn what you might be doing in the future by talking to people that are a few years ahead of you. Okay, so now let me explain a little bit more in detail some of the logistics and some of the details that you should be keeping in mind. So first of all, there is an applications period which is during the month of April. So the applications are done online. The application form is not currently on the website, but it will appear there on the 1st of April. But before that, the camp regulations will be online, so you'll be able to see what exactly you need to do in order to apply, so you can start preparing those materials, and I'll also mention these in the next few minutes. So as I said, applicants should be from any eligible country. You should be in the last 3 years of pre-university education. So in Portugal, this is 10th to 12th grade. The names will be different in different countries. And roughly speaking, we're talking about students born between years 2002 and 2004, although there might be slight variations from country to country. If in doubt, you can contact us and ask for clarification. But essentially, the rule is you should be in the last 3 years of school before university. So all places are assigned to this selection process, with one exception, which is we always have a place for a student from the Paredes de Coura municipality, which hosts the camp. So in that case, that student is selected directly from local school. So that's the only student who does not go through this application process. So other than this special place for the Paredes de Coura students, the only criterion for selection is academic merit and potential. So there's no quotas for Portuguese or foreign students. There's no quotas for 10th, 11th, or 12th grade. There's no quotas for boys and girls, nothing like that. So merit and potential are the only criteria. And as I said already, the last stage of the selection process is an interview that, if you are in Portugal, you can do either here in the Center of Astrophysics on Saturday, the 30th of May, or in Lisbon, in the Pavilion of Knowledge on the 31st of May, or if you live far away from Porto or Lisbon, or if you are just in a different country or in the islands in Portugal, you always have the option of doing the interview via Skype. So that's always a possibility, and you're at no disadvantage in doing the interview via Skype. So what do you need to prepare in order to apply? So first of all, you need a motivation letter written by you, and always in English, regardless of the country where you are, explaining who you are, why do you want to participate in the camp, and what do you think you will gain from the camp. And let me perhaps emphasize that this is supposed to be a letter. It's not an essay, it's not an opportunity for creative writing, it's just a letter. So don't put too much effort into inventing things, just write a letter presenting yourself. Then we need a letter of recommendation from one of your current teachers. And that could be written in English, or it could be written in Portuguese. If you have a teacher who cannot write in any of those two languages, then do contact us when you're preparing the application. Maybe you can get a translation and so on, but maybe warn us in advance so that there's no problems afterwards. Here I should emphasize that the letter should be written by someone who knows you academically. Ideally, someone who's your physics teacher or your chemistry teacher or your maths teacher. And if that teacher has known you for 3 years, 5 years, something like that, so much the better. Our experience is that there are some recommendation letters that are very good and very useful, very detailed and specific to the student that's being recommended, whereas other letters are very vague and almost of no use to us. So if you have several different teachers who could write such a letter for you, try and think a little bit who is a teacher that is more likely to write a useful letter and is more likely to spend some time, providing details that are useful rather than just writing something generic. Then we need your latest school certificate, so with your grades. So in Portugal, this would be the second term grades. In different countries, you might get grade certificates at slightly different times. The rule is that it's the latest grade certificate that you have. Again, if you're in doubt, ask us for clarification. Finally, if you have previously been doing additional scientific activities like national Olympiads, international Olympiads, other science activities, you're welcome to provide certificates or documents showing that you have this previous experience. It's not compulsory, it's not necessary, but if you have them, then that will typically help your application. Finally, one very important point, if you're not 18 at the moment when you're submitting your application, you need a signed authorization form from your parents or legal guardians. So notice that I said at the moment when you're submitting the application. So for example, your 18th birthday might be in July, for example, and in that case, when you are in the camp, if you're selected, you're already 18, but at the moment when you're applying, you're still 17, so you still need that authorization in order to apply. So if you don't have that authorization, we're legally not allowed even to look at your application, so certainly your application will be dropped. So one important point, which sometimes causes confusion, is that you submit all these documents in your application form except the letter from your teacher. So in the case of your teacher's letter, what you do in the application form is provide the teacher contacts. So his or her name and email, and also maybe a phone, just in case. And then what happens is that at the moment when you submit the application, our database uses that email and sends an automatic email to the teacher with the instructions on how to submit the letter. So you don't have to submit the letter yourself. You don't have to get the letter yourself. You just have to warn the teacher that he should be receiving an email once you submit the application. Now, the important point is that we also have to receive this letter by the deadline for the applications, which is April 3rd. Now, in principle, we can be reasonable. So if you submit your application 10 minutes before the deadline, we're not going to give your teacher 9 minutes to write the letter. So maybe we'll wait another day or two. But don't be too confident. If you submit the application, let's say in the first week of April, there's no reason why your teacher should not have submitted the letter by the 30th of April. In that case, when you look at the applications, if your letter hasn't arrived by the deadline, your application is dropped. So try to warn your teacher that there's a deadline which applies both to you and to the teacher. Okay, so assuming that you go through all the application process and you are selected, what can you expect afterwards? So you should be contacted by email and receive an offer of a place by the 3rd of June. So as I said, the interviews are in the last few days of May. We usually need a few days to think about things and decide the places. So around the 3rd of June or maybe the 2nd, something like that, you should receive an email offering you a place. And at that point, you need to confirm that you're accepting the place. And confirming doesn't simply mean replying to the email and saying, yes, I will come. It also implies that you, or maybe your parents, if you're not yet 18, will have to sign some forms. You'll get an explanation of what these forms are and why you're signing them, but we need, so there's paperwork that we need to do, and because of that, there is a deadline, which is June 12th. So if you have not confirmed your place by June 12th, we may withdraw your offer and offer the place to someone else. So if you have any physical disability, any dietary requirements, if you're vegetarian, if you're allergic to something, it's your responsibility to tell us at that moment. You can tell us beforehand, of course, but at that point, you need to tell us, because at that point, we are actively planning activities, and therefore we need to take all this information into account. So the camp is residential, has been mentioned already, which means that all the students, monitors, and teachers stay in the camp for the 2 weeks. It's completely impossible for everyone to arrive later or to leave earlier, both for pedagogical reasons, but also for reasons of logistics, because the camp is in a remote place in the mountains, and once we are there, we're more or less stuck there for 2 weeks. It's not that easy to get out. So because it's difficult to get there, we arrange a meeting point and a specific transport. So essentially, all the students will need to arrive at the meeting point, which is the train and bus station in the town of Viana do Castelo, by 4 p.m. on August the 9th. And then at that point, we'll have a special bus taking us to the camp. And on the way back, we will be back at this meeting point by noon on August 23rd. So you can travel to that meeting point if you're in Portugal by train or by bus. And if you travel using public transport, we can refund the cost of those trips. So you just buy tickets with our tax number, and then so you pay for them when you buy them, and then at the end of the camp, we will refund those expenses. If you choose to travel by car, maybe your parents want to drive you or prefer to drive you there, you're free to do that, of course, but in that case, we cannot refund that cost. In case of students that are flying to Portugal, you have to fly to Porto Airport, and you need to tell us in advance when your flights are and so on, and we'll have people at the airport waiting for you and accompanying you in the rest of the trip. So either one of the monitors or one of the teachers will always be there waiting for each of the students. In the case of students coming from Portuguese islands, Azores or Madeira, we can help you getting those flights covered. So we don't have any formal guarantee, but in principle, and this has happened in the past, the regional governments in Azores or Madeira typically are willing to pay for the costs of the flight of these students. We normally send them a letter saying that the student has been offered a place and so on. So that can be arranged. For the foreign students, we cannot cover your flights. As I said, you might be able to get funds from local sources, your school, your municipality, some science club, anything like that. We're always willing to write a formal letter if you need it, saying that you have been offered a place. And if you find no other means of support, the part of your camp expenses that you or your parents may need to pay will be a maximum of 400 euro. We don't know the exact number yet because we don't have a final budget, but at maximum, this will be 400 euro. In principle, it could be slightly less. And this payment should be made by the end of June. Okay, so to summarize important dates for you to have in mind. So the applications will be during the month of April, and as I said, they are done online on our website. Once this application period ends, we look at all the applications and make a selection of people to be invited by interviews, invited for interviews, and you should expect an invitation for an interview by email by the 10th of May. So if you don't receive anything by this date, you should assume that unfortunately your application has not been successful. The interviews, as I said, will be on the 30th and 31st of May. When you receive an invitation for an interview, if you are in Portugal, the invitation will always mention a time and a place, either Porto or Lisbon, depending on which one is nearest. You're always free to say that you're too far away from Porto or Lisbon and you prefer to be interviewed by Skype. That's always fine. If the time that we propose is not convenient for you, maybe you have a different thing scheduled for that time, you can say so and tell us which other options you have. But bear in mind that we'll be interviewing 30-something, maybe 40 students during this weekend. So the schedule will be very, very tight. And if you cannot make the time we offer you, it might be difficult for us to arrange another time. We'll do our best, but try to be flexible because the schedule is tight. And one of the points of principle that we have is that all interviews must be done during this weekend. So it's important that everyone is interviewed at the same time, because otherwise we start forgetting what people said in the interviews. So in order to be fair for everyone for the selection, all the interviews have to be done in a short amount of time. So then by the 3rd of June, if you are offered a place, you should receive an email. If you do not receive an email by the 3rd of June, it doesn't necessarily mean you cannot come to the camp. Sometimes students are offered places but realize they cannot come because they have another commitment in August. So it has happened once or twice that people decline. And in that case, we might be making some further offers later on, or maybe a student is late in providing all the documentation, and we withdraw that offer and offer the place to someone else. So if you don't receive anything by June 3rd, your chances of participating are much, much lower, but they're not necessarily zero. So once all the places have been made and accepted, the other people will get an email saying that unfortunately all the places are taken and we don't have a place for you. But this might be later in the month. So in principle, all the places must be accepted by the 12th of June. If there is any payments to be made by you or by your parents, they should be made by the end of June, and then the camp itself is in August. So just to finish and summarize what we said, AstroCamp is an opportunity for you to learn your favorite topics in physics and astronomy, to talk to active scientists, either who are physically at the camp or that talk to us remotely via Skype. You can meet other students that have similar interests to yours. You can learn skills that are useful for any future scientific or technical career that you might take, programming, analyzing data, etc. Statistical tools are very, very important these days in a wide range of fields. So even if later on you decide not to do physics or astronomy, you can still get technical skills that will be useful for your future. It's also important to bear in mind what the camp is not. As you heard a few times already from various things we said, it's not a 2-week summer holiday. You'll be expected to work and work hard, and we'll push you as hard as we think you can go. But this is done in a secluded place where you don't have the stress of everyday life. The accommodation, the food are all there. So all the conditions are there as best as we can organize them, are there for you to concentrate on learning new and interesting things. As I said a minute ago, it's not just for future astrophysicists. We'll focus on physics and astronomy because those are the topics we know more about. But again, you can learn skills that are useful in many other contexts for your future. Also, although the camp is selective, the camp is not necessarily for students with the best grades. So grades are an indication of a few things, but they are not necessarily the best predictor of the future success of a person in a scientific career or another career. So don't feel intimidated just because your classmate is applying and he or she has slightly better grades than you. If you think the camp is for you, it's something that you should do, then you should apply and see what comes out. But do bear in mind that the camp is selective, so you should make an effort in preparing a good application. So don't write an application in the last half an hour. So even if you submit it in the last half an hour, don't write it in the last half an hour. Think about it during the month or even before. So think which teacher you should ask for a recommendation letter. Think of writing a good motivation letter and so on. So prepare for the application. And being selective, you should be prepared, as I said, to be there and work hard. So enjoy the landscape, enjoy talking to other people, but also be prepared to work. And finally, even if after hearing us for the last hour or so, even if you're completely convinced that the camp is for you and that you're definitely going to apply, and even if you think you know everything you have to know about applying, you still should read all the documentation that you have in the camp. So the camp regulations are there. Other information is not currently there, but will be there. So we'll provide later on some suggestions on how to write a good motivation letter. We'll provide some suggestions for teachers to write a good recommendation letter. So make sure you're aware about this information and make sure you use it when you prepare the accommodation. And of course, good luck. We will have many applications as we always do, and our life in making the selection is difficult, but these are the kinds of difficulties we enjoy having. So the more excellent applications we have, the better the camp will be. So that's all we had to say. Let me just remind you that we have a dedicated email account. So if you have any questions on what you heard in this presentation or any information you find in the camp, you're welcome to contact this email. The email is checked regularly, so we'll see your messages and reply to them. And during the applications period, the email is checked several times a day. So in principle, you should expect a quick answer to any question you may have. So that's it from us. Good luck, and we hope to see many of you in August.